Wondering, what the top story to you is out there. Is it the offensive line alignment or something else?
Well, I think first off, it is. It's whatever's happening up front, because that's been the biggest question for the Cowboys this offseason. It's where are they going to put Tyler, Tyron, Terrence, whenever all these guys are back and healthy. So, yeah, I think that's, especially whenever these guys don't have pads on, that's probably the first place you're looking is where they're lining up and how they're going to try and deal with that rotation come training camp and come Oxnard.
Are you buying this at all, that the Cowboys are intrigued by these taller guys playing guard, even if they're not the strongest dudes? I feel like the game's been around long enough. We got a pretty good idea on the body type it takes to play guard these days, Kyle.
I think there's some truth to it, because overall you've seen at least an opportunity for a lot of these guys to see reps at guard. I mean, today was Matt Waletzko. That was the first one that really stuck out to us. He was playing left guard, and Josh Ball, of course, has spent some time at right guard whenever, of course, Zach Martin's not been in the fold the last couple of days. So I think seeing those guys rotate in, it's not necessarily a cut and dry situation where it's you're going to see these guys at guard all season long and that's it. I think really with it being in OTAs and with it without pads, it allows these guys to get some footwork and get some continuity with being inside or being outside. And I think the success that they had with Tyler Smith there last year maybe sets that up as a possibility, because they can say, okay, maybe there is this position flex with some of these bigger guys, these stronger guys that you can put on the interior. And luckily for the Cowboys, they don't have one of these smaller quarterbacks that you have to worry about him throwing it into the back of the helmet of these interior offensive linemen. Instead, you can rely on Dak Prescott to get the ball out and get the ball over these guys in front of him. So I think it's mostly just a tryout phase, and we're going to see, at least the closer we get to Oxnard, some of these guys weed out and depend on where they're going to be come preseason play.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me where they're going to actually put Terrence Steele, because Jerry keeps on teasing, maybe left guard there. And then we saw Tyron today kick back out over to left tackle. What's the latest on Terrence Steele? And then we got the report that maybe he's not even ready to rock for the start of camp.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to the wire for the most part with Steele, because he has been on this trajectory from an injury standpoint for quite some time. But even in talking with him the last couple of days, he seems like he's in good spirits and he's trying to get back, and he feels like he's still confident in getting back to camp. He told me the other day he can't wait. I mean, that was the first thing out of his mouth. He's like, I just can't wait to get back on the field and get going. But he's the key to this whole thing, Zach. I think until Terrence Steele is healthy, you don't know what you have from a rotational standpoint. Yeah, you can try things out. You can throw Tyler at left tackle or at left guard. You can throw Tyron at right tackle if you really wanted to, but of course his best spot is at left tackle. But until you have Terrence Steele and you know exactly that he's healthy and he's ready to go full strength, I don't think this offensive line is at full strength no matter what. And additionally, you have a couple other dominoes that need to fall after the case.
Are you buying Jalen Tolbert second-year bounce-back season?
It's hard to really put an expectation on him, but is he going to be better than a rookie year? Yeah, I think so. It's kind of hard to be anything less than what he was in 2022. But I like what we've seen so far. And it's hard, again, because it is so early and there are no pads. But what you've seen is some explosion. What you've seen is an ability to pick up what they've been doing offensively and pick up those assignments and those routes, and really being in the right place at the right time. He caught 2 touchdown passes today in red zone work, and that was mostly 7-on-7, and it's not very physical. But if he's at least showing signs of improvement, then I will take that from Jalen Tolbert, because I think for the most part, that's what you want to see from the second-year player, is at least some sort of improvement, and hopefully that means he's going to find some sort of contribution.
It's Kyle Youmans, Cowboys.com. A couple of young receivers in there. Are they looking to find something significant on their depth chart, or what are they doing there yesterday?
I think they were just maybe kicking the tires on a couple potential guys. Of course, you saw that they did release Antonio Callaway, no longer with the team, and they go out and they sign Johnson, who comes in as a former draft pick and somebody that maybe can be a speed guy. I mean, he's a sub 4.5 wide receiver, and they've made a conservative effort to put more speed on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't think it was really anything significant. It was mostly depth pieces because neither Callaway nor Johnson really have high expectations going into training camp to fight for these battles. I think the biggest thing is going to be the middle of that wide receiver depth chart because you're set at the top with CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and of course Brandon Cooks coming in this offseason. Then you've got a number of names after that. You have Dennis Houston that showed up last year in the preseason and has stuck around up until this point. Dontario Drummond, same thing, flashed some things in Oxnard last year and could potentially find himself playing a role. And then you have Simi Fehoko and Jalen Tolbert, two guys that were draft picks and haven't necessarily lived up to the expectations to this point. And so you need them to show a little bit this year if they're going to really make the roster and find their way aboard. So I think it's a three-tiered look at the way the wide receiver room is built out right now. And for the most part, a lot of the eyes and most of the eyes will be fixated on what the middle of that tier group looks like going into training camp and what they're able to bring to the table.
What stood out to you from the linebackers today? Guys like Damone Clark, Jabril Cox, you mentioned some of the receivers not necessarily stepping up. He's a guy that I think we were super excited about and hasn't lived up to maybe expectations. What stood out to you with that group?
Yeah, it's a lot of footwork and a lot of reading ability that you're working on right now, of course, without pads. So if you don't have the pads on, you can't show the physicality and the tackling and whatnot. But I mean, there were parts of practice where you saw these linebackers get into coverage. Jabril Cox made a really nice play in coverage today and broke up a pass on the goal line, and that's something that, of course, he was heralded with out of LSU and during his time as a Tiger down in Baton Rouge was how good he was in coverage. But since he came down with that injury a couple years ago, he hasn't necessarily lived up to the expectations from a coverage standpoint. So it was good to see him have some good reps and find his way into a PBU toward the latter parts of practice. Another thing I think to look at are some of these other young players. I mean, Devin Harper, who's heading into year number 2. You've got Damone Clark, who could take a second-year jump now that he has a fully healthy offseason and can really dive into bringing some strength. But I'll tell you what, the guy who I was most impressed with today was DeMarvion Overshown, the Texas linebacker. It wasn't a lot, and it's really hard to differentiate between a couple of these guys, but his footwork is crisp. His ability to go sideline to sideline, he showed a little extra effort, that hustle that you would anticipate from a rookie and somebody that is trying to make an impact in a busy room. But it was also what he did on the sleds. Some of the physicality he showed, even without pads on, was really fun to watch. And I think Overshown might be one of those under the radar guys that could make an impact either on special teams or maybe in the rotation at linebacker as well.
I mean, I hear you, Kyle, but there's no way anything he did on the field today was more impressive than what he did on that stage with you the other day when he belted out whatever country song that was. That was incredible.
Yeah, that was fun, man. I love that event. It's our rookie premiere where we get all the draft picks and all the undrafted free agents. We put them up on stage. We just have basically like a Q&A session. So, yeah, I mean, the question was asked by Isaiah Stanback, good friend of ours, and an analyst for DallasCowboys.com. He asked if there's one thing that you could beat anybody else at on the stage, if you were that confident, any event, what would it be? And he was like, sing. And so he just gets up and he belts out the country song, and he just hit every note, man. It was so fun to watch. And, of course, he grew up in East Texas. He came from Beast, Texas, as they like to call it. Then he went to Texas and played for the Longhorns down in Austin. So he's at home. He was wearing country boots. It was like he was ready for that moment, and he certainly shined, and it was fun to watch. It was one of the more organic and just wholesome moments that I've had in that event the last couple of years, and it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, love seeing that video. Kyle Youmans, DallasCowboys.com with us here in the GBag Nation. Now, from one rookie to another, when it comes to Deuce Vaughn, do you feel confident that this offensive staff will implement him more so than what we saw from Tony Pollard where it took forever, so many years, even though we could all see he was impressive and he was a guy that you wanted to add some juice to your offense, they still neglected to use him. Do you think that happens with Deuce Vaughn, or will they be more interested in getting him involved early and often as a rookie?
You know, it's hard because I don't even think Tony Pollard is the only example of that. And to be fair, he made a Pro Bowl last year, but they utilized him on special teams. But Kevontae Turpin was also in that same sort of mentality where he brings a skill set and he brings limitations to that skill set that coaches need to find a way to scheme around. And Tony Pollard was the same way. Kevontae Turpin was the same way, and I think Deuce Vaughn might have a similar skill set and a similar limitation at that as well. So I think there are going to be ways where they try and get him involved, and I think with Tony Pollard not available at the moment and him sitting out through much of this offseason has allowed for Tony Pollard for Deuce Vaughn, for Ronald Jones, and for Malik Davis to kind of share some of those extra reps and maybe get a couple extra looks. But I don't know. I don't know if I can confidently answer that question until we get deeper into the training camps and even maybe the preseason, until you finally see him in game action and NFL game action on just how much they're going to utilize. Of course, they're going to make a shot at it, but is it going to be effective? It's hard to really say yes or no to that prior to really see him in actual NFL action.
Has there been a Zeke sighting yet? I know Jerry keeps getting me teased on that one.
Not yet, Gavin, not yet.
Okay.
We're getting close to that. We got to get I guess the post-June 1 is here now, right? I mean, the money has been allocated. So, maybe sooner rather than later, but there hasn't been anything, at least at the Star, that I've seen.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing you out there in Oxnard here before too long, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. We'll talk to you soon.